How many other social networks are we involved in? How many other external commitments outside of our day-to-day jobs, which already demand enough, are we involved in? So I think all of these, negatives that we hear about ourselves, rooted in some truths, and it's always a good practice to reflect on where those truths are coming from. But I think it's also important to remember that, we grew up being told you can do anything, American dream, you want it, you can have it, the world is yours, you just got to go out and get it. But I think we're also the first generation where that's not the case. Our parents are now at the age of retirement going to live a better life than we will when we get to that age. The generations above us have more secure futures from birth to death than we do. And so perhaps part of the reason that we're being labeled as self-absorbed or stubborn or incompatible is that we know what we want, we know that there's things in our way, and we don't care. We still want it. Mm-hmm. So I think there are a lot of things that going into conveying legitimacy, and we should be aware of the fact that these myths, truths, or half-truths are out there about us, and use them to our advantage. So how can we see some of these half-truths as being leverage, as being something that we can exploit, more or less?
Well, the one big thing is with all stereotypes or generalizations is there are gross generalizations. Mm-hmm. They're talking about a segment of the population, not the population as a whole. With that being said, going back to my earlier point, this is the first generation where everything we do is known. Mm-hmm. Everything we've done, every mistake we made is known by the world. This is the first generation where you could make a tweet or a comment as an individual sitting in your bedroom, and the president, the best athlete in the world, or whoever can directly communicate to you. This is the first generation where it is really a global community. Mm. Back when I was a middle school cat, I was my Houston was the biggest thing I knew, and now I communicate with friends across the world on a daily basis, and it's just Tuesday. Yeah. There's nothing special about that. So keeping that perspective gives us an opportunity to really demand leverage in the business arenas that we work in. I'm in the Chamber of Commerce BRN Group 5, and I talk about different things, and I mention like, hey, we can do this, do that, or instead of waiting 3 weeks to meet when everything is convenient for everyone, let's get a freaking camera on and have a virtual meeting. We can still have a face-to-face. We communicate. We can have our productivity tools available to us instead of just trying to meet at a time just to convene with us physically. The generations before us don't necessarily see that as an ease. Mm. Although some of them do, most of them do not. Mm-hmm. We can utilize these type of access points as utilized as an ease of accessibility to our clients, to our customers, to our peers, to knowledge bases.
And maybe through that you can convey legitimacy to the millennial demographic in particular, like your mastery of these terms or this method of communication, your ease with which you flow between mediums. Just to tie it back to the topic a little bit.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah, right? True. So I think that's a big thing. The one impulse loses that I can't keep it together.
I'm losing it now.
You're so much a shot.
So I do think that's really an important way that you can communicate legitimacy to the millennial demographic. I value ease of use over everything, and something that I try to do is keeping consistency over all my platforms, so that you get a printout from my agency that looks just like the thing on the Facebook page, it looks just like my website will look, things like that. You know what I mean? So I think that it's a really important way to convey legitimacy there.
At the same time, we're not only conveying legitimacy to millennials. Honestly, I think our harshest critics are non-millennials. Right. And they're gonna meet you, a 20-something insurance agent who says, I know how to plan your entire life so that you can go to bed every night knowing that you're gonna be safe at 70 years old. And they're gonna say,
sorry.
Yeah.
But I'll be like, check out my Facebook page.
That's not enough. So where do we insert ourselves with those individuals who just look at us him by saying, "You're a startup. You're young. I've never heard of you before. You're a new company. What? Why aren't you H&R Block?" Like, how do we say it doesn't matter that you don't know me, that I'm a startup, that I'm a millennial, whatever. It doesn't matter that I'm blank. I'm legitimate.
I'd like to actually. I'm going to give you a solid stuff, because when I started touching money, I was 21 years old. When I started managing it, I was 22 years old. And never once did age come up. And I'm going to tell you 3 things that I did. First, I got my suits tailored. And no, but like this means something. It means, like, realistically speaking, I knew how to dress. And as much as, we don't want to judge people by their covers, older people do. And if you guys haven't figured this out yet, I'm looking at Amran Hassan's mother. She could probably attest to this, that people look at how you dress and they can read you up and down right away and say, nope.
It was one of the first things.
However,
she said it's true.
However, it's coming in real estate from that perspective. You have people walk into a house and you're like, that guy just put a joint out on the front step and he's got millions of dollars.
Yeah.
And he can.
And he'll pay cash for it.
Yeah.
But this is talking about the extraordinary, the kind of the outlier of the situation.
Sure, and it is also
what was one of the
geographical.
first? So
Yeah, I
for
would
those who don't know, Elliot and I are partners.
a package.
He's taken, thank you.
So when I ask weird questions about what was the first thing you were told about appearance when you were hired, that's why I asked.
Oh, yeah.
The first thing, I came in, I had 2 nice shirts. They were both stained from sweat because I'd worn them all summer. They were very nice, but they were not good in any means. And the first advice I got was dress better than all of your clients to convey legitimacy. And I think that's true. And I'm not there yet. I've been putting off the tailor for months. So I need to get there. But
Once more, it's just, I'm saying that as a generalization. I'm not saying go to a tailor and get all your stuff tailored.
Specifically for me, I've been meaning to. Regardless.
What I mean by that is dress nicely.
Yeah.
So dress nicely.
But at the same time, and I don't want to stall on your 1 point of 3.
Yeah.
But
Sorry.
Apparently I drew a wee crowd because I'm from Google. But like, I actually got up this morning, went to my closet, was gonna throw on like a scrubby little sweatshirt and like some ratty old blue jeans, and remembered that I was coming here and telling people that I'm legitimate and you can be too, and I figured maybe I should put on something a little nicer.
You look nice.
Thank you. But at the same time, this is Google formal.
Right.
All right. I had a coworker ask me today, "Do you have something going on today?" I was like, actually, I do.
I experience a lot in tech companies. There's an auditor, and I audit a ton of tech companies out here. This right here is overdressed for every single company I've audited.
That's nice.
Period. Thank you.
Yeah.
I've been having since college.
Oh, very good.
A long time ago.
In real estate, yeah, you get the,
Actually, I think that's a really good point.
Yeah, exactly.
Because actually, the more dressed down you are, flip-flops.
Mm.
The guy who wears flip-flops is boss.
Yeah.
Just saying.
Yeah,
so
he's got nothing left to prove.
And I think as if you're in finance, or a shade of finance, I definitely think what you said is right.
Yeah.
If you're
Can I make one more comment
If
before
I
you
were to
two?
walk into Google, everyone would look at him and say, not a Google. Definitely.
But,
Yeah, you
not
get
the
thrown
way
out.
he's dressed.
But not when he
But that's
wants
not
to be
finance.
with Google.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
But
I
if
think
I were to walk into a finance meeting, they'd be like,
Yeah,
this is who I'm
just
dealing
let's-
with?
It depends. It depends. So this is one example just for you get to your 2, and it's going to a generation very connected with sports and everything else. So example was made when like LeBron James. Everyone probably heard of LeBron James. That's a good example. When he was interviewing to be with the NBA, he had on a suit, a tie, very clean cut, didn't have a tattoo down to his wrist. He looked like Invo at the end of the day. Not to say he
I look like LeBron James, guys.
But he dressed with a suit and tie when he wanted to be apart. It wasn't until he made his own until he became what he is today.
Mm-hmm.
So when you want to be a part, when you want to enter a society, a program, an organization, you have to dress apart. Generalizing it globally, that is what INPO is saying.
I'm trying to talk about legitimacy, and
Exactly.
especially because
Absolutely.
we're moving beyond just millennials.
Yeah.
Part of helping me acquire older clients, because remember, when I was 22 and managing people's money, my friends were 22 in college and doing beer bongs.
Mhm.
And they weren't going to be my clients.
Yep.
So, and what I mean by get a tailor is in like dress appropriately.
Yeah.
based on who you're trying to impress.
Mhm.
So for me, it was older people. Older people really like someone who's dressed well, who actually gets his shirts washed, pressed. The suit has to be fine cut, and they see that.
They see it.
Because if someone is struggling as a financial advisor, you can see that too.
Mhm.
You can really see that. It's just apparent. Second thing that I found was don't be afraid to ask. So sometimes, if you're not putting yourself out there, then and you're always like worried if you're like in a spot, then you're not legitimate because you're always worried. So if you don't say, hey, you know what, I actually am worthy, I actually am learned, and guess what, I probably am because every day I'm reading this stuff, and guess what, every day the guy who is the broker before me probably is already pretty cush. But guess what, things change all the time. We're in this generation where things change.
Mhm.
Last thing that made me really, really legitimate was I didn't let my age bother me. I walked in, and guess what? They didn't ask me, hey, could I see your driver's license? No, I asked, could I see your driver's license? That's how my conversations went. Because literally, in order for me to put through applications, in order for me to manage money, I needed their ID. So they're telling me their social, their kid's social, their mom's social. They're telling me their driver's license. They're giving me a copy of it. Guess what? I walked in. I didn't even blink. I asked them for all that stuff.
Yeah.
Because quite frankly, they don't ask about my age. I ask about theirs. That's it.
Sort of ties into one thing. Finding confidence is a big deal, but beyond that, my office is set up as a bullpen. So basically, you've got the side offices for the tenured agents, and then you've got the new agents who are in the middle, and everyone's there. And then my boss will come out and ask us, guys, what do you specialize in? And we'll all yell, bullshit. That's what we specialize in. We specialize in whatever you want us to specialize in at the moment. We know how to do different things, but we might not be experts in.
Thank you.
So the first thing you got to do is specialize in BS. Basically, you've got to convey confidence and let people know whatever you're specializing in, it can help them. And then later you actually specialize when you actually have knowledge and expertise. But in the beginning, it's kind of fake it to make it at a certain level.
You guys, this is great. So we left last week's meeting,
What was
and
the point 3 though?
that was the third
Yeah,
part.
that was.
So
Confidence,
Appearance,
dress well.
don't be afraid. Don't
Don't be
let
afraid to
my
ask.
age
Don't be
bother
afraid
me.
to ask.
Because remember, it's only your perception of your age that will ever come off. They don't ask you for an ID.
And your perception is what
You can have
conveys
no
your
fun
lack
for
of
a while.
confidence.
No, I was, I like to absorb before I say anything.
That's a good strategy.
Thank you. When you said age, like, I don't know if any of you guys can guess my age. I just turned 19 5 days ago.
Welcome to Club Millennial.
I was thinking 18.
18?
Yeah.
Close enough.
I would not have guessed below 20.
Yeah, I would have said 20.
Well, she already said she's not old enough to drink.
Would not have
Yeah,
guessed
I didn't hear
above
that.
18.
Yeah.
That's why. Oh,
Yeah.
He's
okay.
18.
Guys.
Go ahead.
No, but what I was saying is, the confidence is a really big part of everything you do. And when you're talking about like getting dressed and stuff, like I feel like it depends on the person and not just the environment.
No question.
Because I know for a fact if I came and I slummed, like nobody would take me seriously. I have to overcompensate for a factor of things that I am as an individual. Like if I don't overcompensate for the I can't just to be blunt, I can't dress or act or carry myself as an average white male because I'm not him. I'm a woman, first of all. I'm a Muslim, which is another minority. I'm young, which is a third minority. That sort of thing just stacks up. And if I don't carry myself a different, higher way, then, I'm not going to, I'm already swept under the rug. I'm going to be, dust at that point. So it doesn't just depend on the person, it depends on the environment, it depends on a number of factors, and it's not just black and white. Older people are not necessarily going to like you from their old thought processes and things of the way they carry themselves or what they've been through. So it's not going to be black and white. You have to figure out, I've learned this at a very young age, you have to find yourself before you can let other people define you, and then you define yourself that way.
That's very, very good point. Very good point, because I've experienced that in many different ways. I've been overdressed, I've been too tall, I've been too dark, and I've been too not Asian, and everything. It's very true. So you have to be very confident, and that's to your point. You have to be willing to ask, got to be willing to be yourself, and also play the game. It's unfortunate. We have to play the game.
All right, as the moderator, I'm going to take a brief moment to interrupt and echo the fact that, so a week ago, the first time I came to this meeting was 2 weeks ago,
This is your
and
second
this
meeting.
is my second meeting, and I walked away from last week, and they were like, so who's going to host the next week? Oh, Sloan, you're new, you're not. Oh, I'm going to host it. And so that's exactly how it went. And so when I was thinking, I was just racking over, what's worked for me personally, and I kind of grouped it into 3 things. The first is know your user and play by their rules, which I think you just covered.
Exactly.
The second was confidence, honesty, and humility, which I think you perfectly summarized by saying define yourself first, then worry about how other people are going to define you.
Mm-hmm.
And then the last piece is my favorite piece because I come from Google, which is data and documentation.
Mm-hmm.
So I'll go over those 3 again. Know your user, play by their rules, define yourself, and employ confidence, humility, and honesty, and have something to back it up. Data and documentation. So if we're going to think about those 3 buckets, the user, yourself, documentation, I think that's kind of a fundamental jumping off point before you're putting yourself in front of other people as a vulnerable being, asking for their trust, their service, their money, their seriously sensitive information, anything. I think that's kind of the groundwork that you need to walk into any meeting with to be able to convey your legitimacy. So maybe we can kind of explore what each of those 3 buckets mean to each of us.
That is something that applies to my line work 100%. Like, I see it all the time when I'm looking at other agents and whatnot, and especially older ones as well, and I'm trying to convey my legitimacy. I see a lot of the time, and even with experienced agents or much older ones, they kind of are like, well, I don't know, I can get that answer for you later, right? Or they say, oh yeah, no, trust me, I got this, and blah, 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 blah. But like for me, like anytime I do an open house or something, I literally spend the entire morning preparing for it, running market analysis, doing data, studying disclosures. Most of the time, I use 2% of that when I'm at an open house. But the fact that I can pull that answer out at a moment's notice and show them that I know what I'm talking about, and if they go to another open house and they ask them that same question and they can't answer that as well as I could, that conveys my legitimacy right there, right?
What happens if you spent 6 hours preparing for an open house and you've got something for everybody who comes in that front door and it's the last 5 minutes and someone comes in and you do not have an answer for their question? How do you maintain your legitimacy?
What the thing is, I'm gonna. Do you mind if I jump in?
Go first.
Yeah, save him.
Yeah.
You saved me.
Tag me in. No, so exactly. So this happens to me almost every single client I deal with because the tax code is so freaking big, and every scenario is slightly different because tax is very similar to law. It's not necessarily the code or the specific the denotation of the literature. It's also how it has been portrayed in actual court cases and law. So it is exactly interpretation. So I have to communicate legitimacy through my understanding of what I do know, and also give the client the confidence that I'm able to figure out the situation. I never BS a code or analysis, but I give them the confidence, and sometimes it's fluffing my way around it into saying, hey, this is the basic, because everything, every law, every premise, everything has a very premise, a simple premise behind it. I give them that. Then I tell them the process in which I'll go through in figuring out and give them a very specific time frame when they're going to get an answer, and then I follow through.
So even if you don't
Premise, process, follow through.
Exactly.
Even if you don't have the exact answer, you have a way to
convey
your
convey.
legitimacy.
So that's another thing is, if you don't know your answer, that's an opportunity to follow up and get a lead.
Yeah, and then you get
because you say, because I mean that happens to me on the regular. Same thing.
Oh, yeah.
People are like, well, how much would it cost me to dig this yard out and put a pool? I'm like, I don't know because I'm not a pool contractor,
Exactly.
right? And like, I don't know how much it costs to fill in a pool. It depends on how big the pool is. I mean, there's so many number of issues there, and that's not a part of my job, right? Like I don't price. I can give you rough ballparks and whatnot, but it's an opportunity for me to tell you what, if you want that answer, why don't you leave with your info, follow up with you. I know a lot of good contractors that are will specialize in that line where I can pass that info, and by the way, when I follow up with them later,
and you
do you need help?
Exactly, as a time for another touch to show them how good you are at following up, how regular you are, how reliable you are.
Yeah, well, showing network and not having the answer right there on the spot, because that's the other big one is don't ever give answers if you aren't really sure.
Because
especially not in writing.
You will that will bite you in the ass later.
I've had that situation. And now my business partner forwards me emails before she sends them out.
If you ever text me with a question and I say, "Can you call me?" that means I don't know.
But another thing that I was just thinking about in this topic is remember what you're selling. We all have our products and our services and things that we sell and things we make money doing. But I never sell a tax return. I never sell accounting, whatever. I sell a partnership. I sell a value in our relationship.
You sell yourself.
Wow,
okay. Oops, over here.
But surely.
Yeah, but I'm selling me for the most part. No, so I always go back to that and go back to that basic premise. Like I think I mentioned in the last meeting, Apple doesn't sell you an iPhone.
Right.
They sell you a completely different product. You know what I mean? I remember I interviewed for Google, and I hated the position they wanted to give me. I was so mad about that. And I remember when they say, "Hey, so what do we do?" And I'm like, I started thinking about it, and I remember the person I was interviewing with gave me a completely different answer. I'm thinking about the search engine, the Google phone, all these things, and the way they described Google was completely different. So remember what you're selling, because the question they're asking you is not because they want to know about a freaking pool because they have an issue. That the pool will solve a problem. It's a small part of a problem that they're having. Always comfort that problem, even though you may not have the solution to the small issue.
So it's actually really interesting that you brought up Apple doesn't sell you an iPhone. If you ask most folks who specialize in marketing, it's not a stretch for them to point to Apple and say they were the first company in the 21st century to sell you the why, not the what. You remember that, like the very, very, very early iPod commercials were like silhouettes of people dancing in front of colored backgrounds, and all you could see was the white headphones. You couldn't even see the actual iPod, I don't think. But what you saw was people, doesn't matter what kind of person, it's a person. Doesn't matter if it's a man, it's a woman, black, white, rich, poor, doesn't matter. It's a person having fun. What did they start doing when they started selling the iPhone? And they added video and photo capabilities. You started seeing, you didn't see the amazing mechanism for recording a video. You saw the video. And that video was a mother sending a baby's first word to her father overseas. Right? And at the end of that commercial, you feel something. And you say, oh my God. You can share such intimate moments with an iPhone. Right?
The iPhone's the afterthought.
But the iPhone's the afterthought. What hits you first is, I want that beautiful family. Right? That why is the absolute most important thing that every single one of us has. It's not the what. The what does not matter. Honestly, doesn't matter if you guys are in two completely different spheres. If you yourself, you could probably sell a house and you could probably sell financial products if...
I had to work the corner. Exactly right.
Really, if you said, I want to make sure that you raise your beautiful family in a safe place where they get a good school, and if you focus on, you can go to bed every night knowing that it doesn't matter if you don't have a job tomorrow, you're safe, right? It's the why. That's what I sell as well. I don't sell anything.
GenY.
I develop GenY.
Ooh,
that took a second. I don't sell anything at the end of the day. I develop programs that hopefully people enjoy. So essentially I'm selling a product, an experience, a service.
Right.
But I don't get up every morning and say, yeah, I had 6 more people sign up, did an application for my program. Nice, 6 more applications, nice. That's not why I wake up every morning. I wake up every morning because I want people who like me, did not have the opportunities to learn computer science at their school to learn it anyway. If they want to do it, they can, right? I don't sell applications to my program. I sell access and diversity and knowledge, right? So I think, if we were to group it into 3 buckets, user, yourself, data, and documentation, that does kind of leave out the last big piece, which is the product, the service, and the why. But honestly, I think it is not imperative to include the why in those 3 buckets because they're so interrelated to each of them. You need to know your user so you can tell them why your service is important. You need to know yourself so you can say why you're dedicated to your service, why this is what you do every morning. And you need to have data and documentation so you can say why this is the right choice for your user. So I think we've kind of focused on us and the user a little bit. But what I'd really like to talk about is, and this is a little bit of my bias with where I come from, the data and documentation piece, which is how do we see, so you can say all the words that you want, but at the end of the day, they have to be based in fact. So how do we collect facts that are relevant to our user and faithfully represent our program, service, product? And how do we present them in a way that makes a conversion? So for me, that's someone who applies to my program. For Megan, that's someone who enrolls in your program, someone who buys a house, someone who procures your services, someone who invests in your startup. How do we get that conversion? By saying to them, here's all the actual fact that I can share with you. What are those facts for us? How do we share them?
I think it would start by knowing who it is that you want to convey that to.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know if it would be like you being that person and like reflecting it and finding like your equal. I have an example. I had a startup before, and it was I told you about it. It was like a note-taking, note-sharing for college students, and the user was me. I needed that. Like I had it was like I had a terrible teacher, my friend had a good one. We had to like share notes, and like it was the same course and everything. And I knew who needed it, and it was me. And he needed it. Like we needed it as like college students, and we shared, like we had that huge problem. Like there's some teachers are good, some teachers are bad. But like what I'm trying to say is you have to know who it is. You have to know who he, she, the student, the person, who it is that you're targeting. Whether it's you, you have to know them more. You have to know them better than you know yourself. Like that's
what do they value? What's going to make them convert? And
you have to find out what that is, and like that's really what my startup is going towards. It's like figuring out like their angles, like how they it's like trying to figure out where you don't see it yourself and figuring it out for them, and then targeting that person. So like it's just always figuring it out like from somebody else's perspective, so you can help yourself and not just them.
Yeah, that's a very good point, because one thing that I do a lot with all of my clients is I spend a good amount of time in understanding my client. What is their background? What are their needs? What do they value? What of me values gives them the most value as well? Because that answers different questions. That gives me an opportunity to give them the understanding in a platform that makes sense for them. The one thing I was thinking about when we were talking about data collection is there's no way that we can be an almanac for every single thing that's in our field. I try to always under-promise and over-deliver. It's one thing that I learned early in my career, because I used to be one that said, okay, I can get it done tomorrow, no problem, tomorrow. And life happens. Computer breaks. Something happens, and it never, and it's outside of my control, but I just made myself look bad. So, I don't like the term under-promise, but give a reasonable amount of time for yourself to do the necessary due diligence to give the appropriate amount and clarity to the data you present your clients. Because if you don't do that, you always put yourself in a bad position. Give yourself opportunity to do the amount of due diligence, because that's the one thing that we have the advantage on at this point. We have the knowledge. We have the ability to obtain information either through the internet or whatever, friends, whatever platform you use. Give yourself enough time to get that due diligence done, to provide a useful, a clear, and a readable product. It's something that is a battle for me as well, because I have to tell people tax code. It's like
that's a struggle for me as well.
How do you give that to
Because I approach the market from a very logical point, but 80% of the people I deal with, it's 100% emotional. That's my job is to push the logic and say, like, listen, I know that's how you feel, but that's not how it is, and you need to adapt to do that. And some people, it's harder to do that than other people. I have clients, they're 100% logical, but they're like so stubborn. They don't even want to hear my advice. And so that I wanted to raise that and say, not as an answer to the point you brought up, but as a challenge, right? And saying you do really, really 100% need to know your user, and sometimes the data and the documentation becomes irrelevant, because I have clients that I show them market data, and it's like, look, this is what the market's doing right now, and they just glaze over. They don't care.
So
I just know what I want. Get it to me. Right
knowing
now,
your user appropriately provides how you translate the data and documentation. The data and documentation, it's fact. You can't really change it.
That's the easy part.
Yeah.
But how you convey that, how you share that with your user is absolutely under your control. And knowing them is primary to making sure that the data is actually useful.
Oh, yeah. Well, I think I was just going to add, and it's different, depending on who you're working for, yourself or for a big organization, obviously, is something they can't argue with, like you said, is that data, right? It's like, oh, well, if I have, 1,500 people that signed up in, a day and a half, and I'm conveying that to an investor, that's real and that's factual, right? If it's, we have clients in all 50 states, and, we used to do XYZ work, here's examples. There's no moving around that, right? So they can kind of look to, who are you, what have you done type thing, and, that's, you gain that momentum with, those types of things as you go on. But before you do that, I think you kind of lean on, hey, I do know what I'm talking about. Here's the proof of that, and just kind of go from there.
If I could build on those points, actually, I think that kind of gives you some guidance on who you should be dealing with. If they're not listening to your data and your facts, all business is not good business. Every client is not worth your time. Right? You could be taking a loss on spending time with them. And so a lot of those people who are just like, I need a $200,000 house when the market is $1 million, that tells you that's a client I need to fire, because there's someone else I can be spending my time with. And I think that as a younger person, I think you start off thinking that all business is good business, but as you get more experience, you learn that some business is better than others.
That's a point we've resonated on. Many, many times is knowing when to pick your clients, because part of your legitimacy. A legitimate business does not spend time pursuing illegitimate business.
I very much agree with that, because one point that you were making just now that really resonated with me, and I just totally forgot about it.
Off in there.
I'm at the edge of GenY, man. I'm at the edge.
If I can make a point, when you were talking about how companies and people really look at the not necessarily just they look at the data and things like that. When I was applying to Y Combinator, they were giving advice and stuff like that.
We just went through that process.
They were giving advice. They were like, even if you don't have 100% of your business taken care of or anything like that, just apply. And I was like, but if it's not 100%, then what do you want? Like that sort of thing. They said they were like a really big point to emphasize on what they were looking at the person and not the business. So you can have a person that's super dull but have a really good idea, and then they won't necessarily apply, like they'll give them a chance but not necessarily like emphasize their efforts towards that person, rather than the person who has like a 50 sort of idea but they're very smart, very passionate, they're doing something with their lives. That sort of person they'll go for, because ideas come and go, some ideas fail, but the dull person isn't going to pivot, they're not going to adapt, they're not going to do much.
Yeah.
But the person who's smart, they have the idea, they haven't necessarily adapted, they haven't necessarily done anything, but they have the potential and they have the kinetic energy, not the potential. And like, do you know what I mean?
Yeah,
Yeah.
100%.
Yeah.
So I think actually, I was actually going to expand a little bit more on data and documentation, but I'm also hearing this other piece that I hadn't really considered, which are kind of really actionable ways that we can be legitimate, such as having the appearance that your user expects of you, being able to pivot, be flexible, be, that is absolutely favorite story to tell. They tell every Googler this on training. You can read a little bit about it online. The famous story is new hire, software engineer. He had been working there for 6 months and was given an assignment, and he was like, yeah, okay, whatever. Actually ended up taking all of Google offline for 5 minutes. All of Google across the entire world was offline for 5 minutes because of whatever this guy did.
Oh, shit.
Yeah, right.
Fired, right?
Probably not.
Nope, because he recognized.
Story if it was.
Of course,
Exactly.
It's a trick question.
Trick story.
Recognize what he did. He didn't try to pass it off. He didn't say that person didn't. He didn't say, I don't know what happened. He said, oh my god, I implemented that CL. I don't know what it broke, but it broke something. What do I do? And his superior said, revoke it, just reverse the change, and everything will come back on the previous version.
Hooray, version control.
Yes.
Backups. And he reversed the change as soon as everything was recognized and someone noticed, oh my god, it's broken. And went, I did it, what do we do now? And they said, just fix it. This person in question wrote amazing documentation about what went wrong, how it was recognized, and how it was fixed, and received a peer bonus and a promotion because of his stellar work on breaking Google for fun.
Yeah, because he found a weakness, which is probably one of the more significant things that aspects of companies. Where am my weakness?
Mm-hmm.
Find that before someone else does.
Well, the FBI hires hackers.
Oh, exactly. One of my buddies is an FBI hacker.
Yeah.
He's crazy. He's
Oh,
so
yeah.
weird, but I love him.
Steve asked.
Gotta get all the way to that.
No, he's the most unassuming individual you will meet, but he will kill you via computer.
Humble enough to recognize the mistake, confident enough to admit it, and honest in admitting it from beginning to end.
Yeah, and that brings me to, I remember my first point. I'm going to get to that in a second. But another point that a lot of people look at GenY is not being able to take accountability. And that's the one thing that I stress the most. Like, before even trying to think about why a mistake happened, I say, hey, it's my fault. We'll figure out why. Maybe I know why, and I'll tell you why. But taking accountability is significant.
Yes.
That's what's going to really take us as business owners, GenY, individuals, persons in this freaking world to the next level, is being accountable for your actions, because just own it. Because you own the good, you own the bad. You trust me, we're going to do more good than bad. To my other point earlier, sorry, it's to wine. It's been a while since I had a glass of wine. One thing, no, I got to get through the rest of this meeting. Now, the one thing that we struggle with, and I know, Info, you probably have some of this as well, is that a lot of the things.
In this chat.
A lot of things we have to communicate is almost mandatory. We have to say certain things to avoid CYA, to avoid litigious matters, because we are advising people, we're encouraging people to do things that can lead to damages on their part. And to avoid certain torts, that we have to do certain Exactly. We have to do certain manner.
All of us.
We have to communicate certain things, and a lot of people just do not know.
Yeah.
So sometimes I face with like, okay, I'm sending this email. It's going to be completely over their head, and it has zero chance to reach the individual in a manner in which that is convenient for them, that's comfortable for them. But I still have to do it. But the question is, how do I do that and reach them? How do I do that and still connect with them?
I'll be honest. I am faced with that a lot of the time. My background, personally, academically, professionally, I am a very, hope for the best, plan for the worst. It's better to explain everything in thorough detail than to assume someone knows and then a mistake happens and it's my fault because I didn't explain it, not their fault because they were operating, right? I always err on the side of caution. Too much caution. An excessive amount of caution. To the point where when I do write those emails to my users, I ask, my colleague to approve it, and she's like, I could say this in half the amount of words.
Yeah.
It's about being able to admit some of your weaknesses. A quick aside, it can be hard to realize what our own weakness is until other folks are comfortable enough to point them out to us.
Yeah.
And so, kind of creating an environment around ourselves that welcomes feedback, promotes collection of feedback is pretty critical. But also knowing what your weaknesses are and honestly embracing them and finding the opportunities to bring people. I have my coworkers write my emails or at least look them over so frequently because I'm confident that what I say scares people more than it helps them.
She reads all my emails.
Yes. Okay.
No, that was in school to have some.
So,
Yeah, I know.
Knowing your weakness comes with failing,
Yes.
and failing comes with doing something. And I think that the majority of people, like, let's say people my age, like a year or two older, a year or two younger, they haven't done anything.
Yeah.
And, like, that's why they don't know, like, when, like, friends I have, they're just honestly going through school, doing the bare minimum, barely passing, doing, like, just nothing. And I've moved across the country to do something. And, like, I know where, thank you. Like, I know where my weaknesses are because I've failed a few times, and I know where my strengths are because I've done a few things.
Yeah.
And the people, the older generation, when they say, oh, they don't, they're the lazy ones, they're the ones who don't, because we're stigmatized to think, like, you can't fail. So when you don't do something, you don't fail. But you also, like, it's a part of life. And that's a huge thing that people just don't get. Like, you can't punish people, you can't necessarily, like, it's just part of life. And, like, when you say don't fail, like, it means, like, I'm going to stay in where I am, I'm not going to do much, it's my comfort zone. But that's not how you excel in life, that's not how you do much in life. And that's just a huge thing that the older generation forgot about themselves. Like, you failed a few times. Like, you've done stuff, it might have been a long time ago, but you've done stuff, you failed, and, like, that's how you got to where you are, that's how you know yourself.
Yeah,
Cherry
that is
picking the
true.
successes.
That is true.
I cannot
In
tell you
retrospect.
how many times I was sitting in a class where a professor gave me an assignment out of the blue, and I was like, do you not understand what time of year it is? And how many other of these out of the blue assignments I have to do? And you're all asking me to, like, have you forgotten what it's like to be a student? And I
Ding.
They totally, you've forgotten what it's like to be young, fresh, inexperienced, courageous, explorational. People forget what it's like.
Yeah, but I would say I'm of the perception that this upcoming generation, and more so the one that's coming up, doesn't have a lot of opportunity to fail. You don't have the opportunity to not be great because there's so many things to keep a status quo. Everyone has to get a participation award. Everyone has to be coddled in a certain way. And I find issue with that. I don't necessarily like that. And the caveat to that is the generation before us who say that we are the issue and we have all these issues is the generation that raised us.
I think it's important also to remember that there have been significant systemic changes in society between the last generation, especially the generation before that one, and
exactly.
ourselves right now.
baby boomers to today,
Yeah.
a
Where's my
lot
GI?
has changed.
Where's my GI Bill?
But also, you know, the interesting statistic I heard this weekend was that you're officially old at the age of 37 now, because at the age of 37 you become you're at the point where there are more people younger than older.
Oh. Huh. Is that
Think about that.
Worldwide.
Yeah, worldwide. So at the age of 37, you're officially old because there are more people younger than you than older than you.
But not in the U.S. though. So
I'm not sure the U.S. I'm not
It's
sure.
worldwide.
This was just a
Worldwide,
very general
though, yeah.
statistic.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And you know, like I said, I didn't verify this, but
It sounds right though. Yeah.
if you make
You read it on the internet,
Actually, I
right?
thought it
no, it was on TV.
I mean,
I thought
Oh, it's on TV. Okay, that's gotta be
yeah.
I thought the median age would be like low.
Yeah.
it could be,
Because
yeah.
most of the world is like India and Africa, China. Those are
You got
China trends older.
Japan
India
too,
and Africa trends younger.
which is sort of pulling the
Yeah, but
average up a
they're
little
slower,
bit.
The only reason that the United States is not an aging demographic is
Is
because of our
Yeah,
immigration.
immigration.
Immigration in general, not necessarily Latin American immigration, but immigration in general. We are the place where people come and they have opportunity and that keeps happening.
Warm fuzzy feelings.
Great, but
And
I looked it up.
if we were to seal off our borders right now, our demographic would be aging.
yeah.
Right?
Because also you got to think the wealthiest 1% in the world sending their children here, period.
Mhm.
Especially San Francisco. Yeah.
I just wanted to mention that I unfortunately need to cut out early. It
Yeah.
was a nice experiment with
Yeah,
our
good.
our broadcasting.